Okay, here we go. Hey Revolutionaries, I'm excited to bring you this week's episode with Vin Infante, where we're talking about how he's had 3 careers in the past 3 years. That's right, three careers in the past 3 years, and his latest career, he is a triple threat of being a therapist, a coach, and a mentor, all together, all combined. Therapist, life coach, and mentor. So it's pretty interesting. He's got a great story of, kind of what his dreams were as a kid, how he played out a couple of those careers, dream careers that he had for himself, and one of them being a firefighter for the FDNY. Yes, that was one of the careers. He started out as a psychotherapist in a practice, knew that this other burning desire was within him to be a firefighter. It's what he always wanted to be when he was a child growing up. And he had an opportunity to go for it, and he went for it, which is super cool to me, because that's a hard thing to really pivot. It's taking a left turn. It's competitive to take the test to get in there. You got to be in shape. It's a very serious career to be a part of. He was always pursuing, the psychology component of his life and trying to grow. And at that time, while he was a firefighter, discovered Tony Robbins and got into coaching. And realized, this is the real path that he needs to be on to impact people and to do what he wants to do. And now he's found himself really diving headfirst into this entrepreneurial career. So that's his 3rd career. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting story. So stay tuned for that. Also, real quick, he's got an interesting take on vision boards. So part of what he does is the life coaching and visioning. Once he kind of gets you aligned and tackles, your past traumas and situations that you've been in through his therapeutic part, he helps you with these vision boards, and it's kind of funny how he describes it. Like, hey, vision boards, your impression might be that they're just BS and stuff like that, but he calls his concept a mission board, which I really like, which you have to hear him describe it. So please listen to the episode and check him out. I can't wait for everyone to listen to it. But before we get there real quick, I just wanted to give you an update on what's been happening here behind the scenes, or what I've been up to. So gosh, at the end of February, I was still in Thailand. I just had gotten back from Thailand end of February. I was back for like 2 days, and I slept for like 36 hours. It was like a 30-hour travel flight situation getting back from there. And turned right around, had to leave at like 3:34 in the morning for a 6 o'clock flight to Havana, Cuba, and spent a week in Cuba. And that was a music-oriented trip. Went with some crew of musicians here from Cleveland, with the famous Jackie Warren, who's a Cuban music specialist and legend down in Cuba herself. So thank you, shout out to Jackie and all the Cleveland crew that went and helped coordinate the trip. And super cool down there. It was my 2nd time actually going to Cuba, and so I saw some changes kind of from pre-pandemic days to what the situation is there now. Very instructive, just in all ways. Politics and finance, finance, and seeing what happens with their currency and those kinds of things, and government controls. But also the warmness of the people, and the music is incredible, and the dancing they have down there is incredible. I mean, if you get a chance to go, you should go. And the food's pretty good too. So if you find the right places to go, great food, great rum, of course. Anyways, what was I thinking about? Okay, so here I am. It's April, something in the middle of April, something like that. When this gets released, probably end of April. But next week I'm leaving to go to Israel for 10 days. So I'm going to be back on the road, and I wanted to share that with you because as a preview of coming attractions here, what I think I'm going to do is produce some content, an episode or 2 maybe, around this Israel trip. So I've never been to Israel, and the nature of the trip is I'm going with a class of business students from a local university here, graduate business students for their master's in business program. And the concept from the school is they're going there to visit angel investment venture capital firm, and they're going to visit some of the portfolio companies that firm is financing and helping to back and promoting. And Israel in general is the startup nation, is what they call it. So it's another area around the globe that's got a real lot of academic activity, startup activity, And so I'm super excited to go check it out because that's what I like to learn about. And that's what I want to keep my sort of tabs on what's going on in the world and how things are developing on the technical side of things. So, and I think it would be interesting for everybody listening just to kind of give you an insight into some of the things I'm doing to develop as an angel investor and just learn about that ecosystem, figure out what it is, figure out how I could, maybe add to it in some way with the experience I've had, but also learn from the other people that are in it. So I thought that would be fun, give you a little insider look into that kind of trip, and I'm able to go on this trip because I'm a community member here. The local university is super cool, John Carroll University, that's including me. So I am grateful to those guys too. So I just want to let everybody know that. But without further ado, let's get to this week's episode with Vince Infante. Here we go.
Welcome to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit JimJim'sReinventionRevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim.
Hey everybody, hey, this is Jim. Welcome to episode 104 of Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. Talking today with Vin Infante. We're talking about how to take control of your life and unleash your inner leader. So Vin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Well, thanks for jumping back on again. And as we get going here, okay, I wanted to ask you about the business that you're doing now. Okay, we're going to rewind a little bit and talk about your kind of how you got here, but you have a different approach to coaching and mentoring. And actually, it reminded me of this phrase when I was learning basketball as a young man, like 7th grade, the triple threat that comes to mind. So you have this sort of three-pronged approach. And, for basketball nerds out there, that's, what is that? Do you remember that? It's if you're going to, you want to keep the ball on your hip so you can pass, dribble, or shoot. There you go. Basketball nerds. All right.
Nice.
Triple threat position, they would call it. Anyways, but your approach to life is here for your business, your newer business, is as a therapist, mentor, and coach all in one. So can you explain that a little bit? What kind of where you're coming from and why this is unique out there in the market?
Well, it's all branding, Jim.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, set yourself apart in a world where everybody's the same, right?
I got you. All right.
That was a little piece of it. And the big thing that inspired this modality or this hybrid service that I offer was really coming from a space of, I was a therapist for 10 years. I really didn't feel like therapy was the end all. I didn't feel like it was getting the best results for people. I didn't feel like it was helping in the ways that it promises. And that sparked a few questions of, there has to be something better. What is better? How do I go about learning this? How do I go about using it? And then how can I apply some of the things I'm already good at and familiar with to that process? So I kind of stumbled upon life coaching when I was seeking out what is better than therapy. And I don't think all life coaching is better than therapy, but
okay. I was just going to ask you, does that mean that all life coaching, or maybe why do you think it's better, or is there something about, seems like you think there's a limitation with just therapy, just clinical sort of therapy or talk therapy?
I do, yes.
Okay.
And a big part of it was also from the type of coaching I learned. So I went and got my coaching certification under Tony Robbins because I stumbled upon him, and I mean, he's better than therapists. Like, he gets better results than therapists. He got his name by helping people who had phobias for 15 years in 20 minutes.
Right.
And those people are in therapy for 15 years, right? So I said, okay, this guy is doing something that I don't know, and I need to learn more about that. And so that's what prompted me starting to get more into coaching, study coaching more. And what I started learning was that coaching is really cool because of the fact that it helps people push forward in life. And I think therapy helps people kind of figure out more about where they're at. So the way that I've started introducing my hybrid service is like this. The aspects of therapy are for building consciousness and awareness and understanding parts of yourself at a deeper level, understanding where you've been and where you kind of are today. The aspects of coaching is challenging people to raise the standards of their life and become more than they currently are and make them become more of themselves. And then the aspects of mentoring. Mentoring is, to me, what I've come to see through my own mentors and just how it shows up in this world is that mentoring is an aspect of people wanting to be there for you, showing you love, unconditionally supporting you, and really being there to pour into your life through their experiences. In essence, when you have a mentor, what they're actually doing is teaching you how to be a little bit more like them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're sharing that your experience and how you overcame it, right? And almost, hey, why don't you try and replicate it like I did and see if it works? So that's where I see that there's three unique approaches. And I said, well, what if I could bridge that and create something that would just be very different than what's already out there?
Mm-hmm.
Could I help people get better results quicker and more effectively? And so as I've taken this three-pronged approach, I've seen that a lot of clients are really responding to it, especially your high performers, your business owners, your entrepreneurs, your high achievers, C-suite execs. All of these people really do well with my hybrid approach.
I see. And so how did you, I'm just, thinking about your experience where you're like, hey, maybe you felt like you're running up against a wall a little bit with just the therapy part, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, there's got to be more. Maybe you feel like your clients are a little stagnant. Maybe you thought it was getting a little bit repetitive even with, if you saw someone on a weekly basis, you don't see, big jumps or leaps, and you're like, oh, it's incremental, but it's not maybe leading to this bigger end goal. When you got into it, were you using some of the same clients? Did you start to kind of change your approach with the similar clients you may have been seeing, or was it attracting new people? How did you find these new clients and foster their understanding of what you were offering? You know what I mean?
Sure. So it started off where when I left, so if we segue back a little bit, when I left therapy, I became a firefighter. While I was in the fire department, I was building my coaching practice on the side part-time. And I wound up leaving the therapy office, and I told all my clients I was leaving. Some clients had asked to kind of follow me, which technically, we can't solicit and say, hey, like, I'm leaving if you want to come with me.
Right.
But some of my clients, I was like, hey, I'm leaving. They're like, well, where are you going? Because I want to go. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, I can't ask you to come with me. They're like, I'm asking you, how do I come with you? I was like, well, that's fine. Right. So a few of them came. I think I left with like 5 or 6 clients wanted to continue working with me. And I also told them, I said, listen, I'm transitioning. I'm doing coaching now. This isn't traditional therapy anymore. Mm-hmm. As like, there's going to be a lot of different things as far as the approaches I'm going to take and how I'm going to challenge you. And, there's going to be a little bit of a different expectation. I also am no longer taking insurance. You'll have to be out of pocket. So they met all of these requirements. And with that being said, we started with like 6 or so people.
I see.
From there, I started off, there was this website I found, and you could buy people's information. Now, it's not like weird in a sense, like I'm just getting random people and asking them, hey, you need a life coach? Like, who the hell are you? Right. Instead, it was more of one of those lead sites where people are looking for life coaches or they're looking for therapists, and they just put in their info, and we buy the info, and then we give them a call and we try to sign them as a client, which is, I would say that's warm calling, right? Not cold calling, but warm calling. And then from there, the last thing was just word of mouth. I started joining networking groups. I started going out to different areas, like thinking of where would the ideal clients that I have, like sit down with myself and did a whole client avatar. And then I was like, where could I find these clients? Where might they be? Who might need my help? Where would they hang out? Mm-hmm. And so that's how I started finding people in person. And then from there, it's just been building word of mouth, referrals, partnerships, things like that.
Right. I got you. Okay. Man, you just said a lot just in like a couple of minutes there, because you're just like firing all these, lighting up all these regions in my brain that are like everything I like to talk about, and I think is really good for people that are listening out there to absorb and understand. So you just glossed over that, hey, I quit psychotherapy, quit counseling, and I pivoted and went and figured out how to be a firefighter. I mean, this is super hard to get into. You got to take these tests. You got to be in physical shape. You got to be competitive to some extent, right? It's a total mindset shift. So let's maybe talk about that first of all, and maybe this, I don't know, maybe this does help out the therapy and mentoring part of how to shift and change, how to reinvent yourself. What drew you to I could see maybe you got burnt out. Maybe your first part of your career, you're like, okay, I've done that. I know what it is, but I want to do something different. Why did you just decide to dive in and be a firefighter?
Well, I always have this little joke, and funny enough, it actually rhymes, which works out even better, is that I've had 3 careers in 3 years,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Because, right, I was a therapist, and then I was a firefighter, and then I became an entrepreneur, and I literally did it a year. Like 1 year I was the therapist, 1 year I was a firefighter, and then 1 year I started being an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
And so it changed very rapidly, right? I did 3 careers in 3 years, and most people don't even have 3 careers in their lifetime.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
The firefighting thing was a childhood dream, much like being a therapist. So by the time I was 29 years old, I had achieved my life dreams. I was just like, always wanted to become a therapist, always wanted to be a firefighter. Therapist because my dad was a therapist, and I always really was drawn to that. And how can I help people, and how can I help others? And most importantly, how can I help myself? And then firefighter, I think every boy growing up wants to do cop, firefighter, military, astronaut, right? Like
Right.
the 4 really
Athlete or
cool
something,
things
yeah.
out there.
Uh-huh.
So firefighter was my really cool thing. And I had the opportunity finally at about 28 years old to jump in and do it. And so I said, well, this is really a once in a lifetime thing, because at least in New York, where I was at, New York they have a lot more strict deadlines. New York's FDNY is the most, I guess, the highest performing fire department in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so their strict deadlines, for instance, are if you're not already like scheduled to come in by the time you're 29 and you don't have military service, like there are military guys that would get back years because they were in the military.
Sure.
So they could kind of go over the age limit a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, if you're not a military guy and you're over the age of 29 and you try to take the test, you can't. So you're disqualified.
Gotcha.
So I was about 28 when I came into the fire department. I was like, I could always go back to being a therapist, but I could never be a firefighter again.
Time is now.
And this
right.
is a childhood dream.
Mhm.
So let me go for it.
Yeah, that's super cool. Okay, so you didn't have any I don't know if sort of imposter syndrome about it, or like, what am I doing? Or I mean, obviously being a dream is nice, but knowing that you have the capability and the skills and the drive to actually do it is a different thing. You didn't question yourself, or didn't think like, oh, what am I doing? I'm too old, or have any of those kind of thoughts in your head?
No, I think the hardest part of it was actually just leaving the therapy office. I had a caseload of over 40 clients, and I really loved working with all of them. So telling 40 people like, hey, I'm terminating our relationships, right? Because that's kind of what you do in
That's
therapy.
tough,
If you
yeah.
leave, you don't keep relationships with people, right? You're not supposed to, right?
Mhm.
According to the guidelines.
Right.
So it's like very hard when you finally find a place you like, and I was finally doing that. I've been in mental health for over 10 years. I've been exploring. I've been in inpatient and outpatients, hospitals, clinics, homeless shelter, Department of Education. I was a traveling home therapist. I did applied behavioral analysis, and then I finally landed in a private practice, and I loved it. And it took me a while to kind of get my bearing, right? Because I created my schedule and this and that and all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
And so I really did love it. And then I had this once in a lifetime opportunity, and I was like, damn, I'm about to take a pay cut. I'm about to leave the job I love.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
about, like, I had a Camaro. I was like, I got to get rid of my Camaro. I got to
my
get a
God.
practical car because firefighters can't miss work because it snows.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
And so it really challenged me to change my whole life. I wound up having to move back in with my parents because of my pay cut,
Wow.
get rid of
Okay.
my car, like all of this stuff. And so it really challenged everything about my lifestyle. But I gladly did it because I was like, there's no other chance to do this. This is
Right.
a once in a lifetime. You
Wow,
have
that's
to go
amazing.
for it all in.
Well, thanks for sharing that, because that's just insightful of like, hey, this is what it takes, and you've made the decision that whatever it takes, you're doing this. And so, it wasn't about the money and where you're living and all the creature comforts anymore. It was like, I need to execute on this. I want to be part of it. It's pretty cool to just to know that you have that capability to make that decision for yourself. Even though you've got to pull away, like you said, the hard part is just pulling away from your current situation. I'm going to be a different person now. I have to relate to other people. I got to get different types of friends, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty interesting. That's just a big challenge I've noticed about myself when I'm trying to do new things and go different places these days. It's just like there's always stuff like, what am I leaving behind?
Yeah, I think that's a very common problem that a lot of people share,
Yeah,
right? Is the
yeah,
aspect of I'm not sure if I want to do what it takes to do the new thing. And then a
right.
lot of people are like afraid of wasting time. It's like, but you're wasting time by wasting time trying to make a decision.
Exactly. That's exactly right. If you don't think you're wasting time now, like what what are you really doing, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I've had conversations with people who are in their 40s or 50s, like I was doing coaching with them,
right,
and they're like, I want to pivot. I'm like, okay, so pivot. Like, oh, well, what if I waste time? I'm like, by not making a decision, you're wasting more time.
right,
Because
right,
at least if you start taking action, you could know, like, as you start moving down a path, you might be like, oh, this is the wrong path. And you'll figure that out once you take a few steps into it, as opposed to if you just sit here and try to weigh out all your options. So I've
right.
always been a big fan of just doing things. I tell people the reason I'm so successful is not because of the fact that I know more than everybody. I honestly don't think I know much. I think I still have so much to learn, but
Mm-hmm.
you could always find me taking action.
Right,
I maintain sometimes, like, even on my off days, I'm probably still doing more than most people. Like,
right,
and it's not even work. Like, I don't glorify overworking.
right,
Like, on my off days, my off days considered like go to the gym, educate yourself, continue to keep your routine. Don't be like, oh, it's an off day, let me eat like crap, skip the gym, things like that. It's like
right.
I still keep true to at least my personal identity as opposed to like the work identity on an off day. And I think that's where people get stuck is they think off means like shut down, turn off the system, but
Mm,
find out
okay.
what fuels you even when you're off is powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you said the right thing is action is just taking action. Action just trumps knowledge and credentials and all that other stuff that you think is going to get you somewhere. Action kind of trumps it. But the decisions that go along with it, like you said, like if you just made good decisions, a couple of really good decisions, meaning like even just based on your diet or going to the gym that one day, it's just super impactful because it cascades, like day after day after day. That's what I figured out about myself. It's like it's the toughest thing to try to change. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I do the podcast because I'm trying to rewire my own brain and listen and help people out there that are listening, rewire theirs if they're so inclined. It just takes little actions to kind of get it going. Okay, so you become a firefighter, and maybe in your spare time, which is crazy to think you have that much spare time being a firefighter, but you were still interested in this, counseling, coaching, figuring more things out about yourself and about life in a different way, right? How did you stumble upon Tony Robbins? Why was that interesting to you during that time? Were you trying to work on yourself in this different way, or who turned you on to Tony? Or is that something you learn about when you're going to school for psychology? Is he a subject of interest or?
No, they never mention him in psychology.
Oh,
They
okay.
don't mention much of anything that's helpful in psychology, honestly.
Oh, really?
But
Okay.
at least in school, I'm sure there's some good info out there
For
somewhere.
that, all right. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I found that so I was building my coaching business on the sides, right? I had already been studying Tony Robbins at the time that I had left.
Okay.
The thing that really turned me on to him now, I had heard his voice. I used to listen to a lot of motivational videos when I was doing a lot of like self growth and development. Like I had a little ritual where I would listen to YouTube videos every day about
Hmm.
just great speakers talking, right? Giving wisdom. And I would hear his voice, but I never knew who he was. And I was like, this guy really says a lot of good shit.
Right.
And so one day I remember I came home and my girlfriend was hanging, she was there. And I was like, "Oh, like who are you listening to right now?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm listening to this guy Tony Robbins. I just got his coaching certification course." I'm like, "Oh, really?"
Hmm.
And I'm
Okay.
skeptical at the time. I'm still skeptical of coaches, even Tony, just because
Right.
like as a therapist, you're trained to be skeptical of coaches because we're all arrogant and and we don't believe if you didn't get a nice fancy 6-year degree, you don't deserve
Right. The
the title, right?
accolades or
So,
whatever. Right. Yeah. And some of the content can be a little slick too. Looking, it's very
of
produced.
course.
Some of the things, but if you just really look at what the content is and what he's doing, I mean, and what guys like him are doing, it's just there's something to it.
100%. And so what really got me about Tony is as I was listening to him speak, he's talking about all these things. Now, I had a very deep understanding of a lot of founding fathers of psychology, talking about Skinner, Maslow, Ericksonian, Gestalt. Like for a lot of people, they probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but these are like founding fathers of very powerful, proven techniques and bases for everything we know about psychology. Like these guys are the fathers, right? And so Tony's standing up there and he's talking and he's saying things in such a simple way that the average person will completely understand it. But what he's talking about, how he's explaining, I'm like, oh shit, this guy knows everything about psychology. This guy is the world's master psychologist. And so that was the biggest thing that drew me to him specifically. I can't say a lot of coaches out there are great because I don't know enough about them. In fact, I've met a lot of coaches that I would say are not great. But when it comes to Tony, his stuff was real deal. And I was like, wow, this stuff makes a lot more sense. In fact, the fact that hundreds of millions of people can understand it means he's doing something right. Because most therapists have a tough time just explaining basic theories to people,
right,
which means there's a problem. So that's what really got me into it. And I had started learning his stuff. I took my own certification course, got that. And then that's where I started saying like, okay, cool. I feel pretty ready to do coaching and implement these deeper aspects of therapy because that's kind of what Tony does, just on a really high level.
Right. Okay. So, so coming out of that experience of getting the certification, et cetera, was that what spawned the, I guess, the idea or confidence? And again, it's just another thing I heard you say earlier about, you just sort of glossed over all these amazing things that you happened to do within this short time period. And that's pivoting into entrepreneurship and thinking, hey, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to see this as a career, not as a side hustle or a hobby. I think I can do this. And where did you get those skills? So, I love that you were sharing before the entrepreneurial part of like, hey, I found this lead list. I figured out how to go to and start speaking and go to, the Rotary clubs and like all these techniques to get the word out and to attract people to yourself, just so you can serve better. Where did all that come from?
Just kind of came from a whatever it takes mentality. One of the biggest things that Tony Robbins talks about, and then I kind of looked up the story because I was curious about it, is he likes to talk about if you want to take the island, you have to burn your boats. And so for people who don't know what that means, what it is when you're put in a live or die situation, more times than not, you'll live. And this was an actual story from this Spanish commander named Hernan Cortez. And he had actually told one of his soldiers to go and burn the boats that he landed on this island with, which he was tasked with taking. And he told his soldiers, he said, look there, all of your boats are burning. If you men want to get off this island, we have to take it. Otherwise, we all die here. No man's getting off alive. No man runs. And you bet your ass they took the island. So
right.
I had that burning in the back of my mind when I was still in the fire department, and I realized my coaching business wasn't really growing. There were times where they would call me into work and I had to reschedule coaching clients because it was last minute or whatever the case was. And I realized I wasn't really giving it my all. I also realized as long as I was getting a salary and if I needed more money, I could always do overtime. So I didn't really have any incentive to actually bust my ass.
Right.
So I was okay. For a little while, I got a little stagnant. I had a few clients. I didn't seek any out. It wasn't a big deal if I landed some or not.
Right.
And I realized that I really loved coaching, and this is what really called to my heart. And the fire department was drifting away from that. I think I lived out my dream and realized it wasn't my dream anymore, which was a little disappointing, but
sure,
it's kind of goes along the lines of what I tell people is like, you have to take action because you'll never know. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I took the action. I'm glad I became a firefighter. I'm glad I kind of resolved that childhood dream.
Right.
But that's what let me know clearer than day, like, this is what I'm really meant for. And so after a few really hard weeks of pacing back and forth physically and mentally, I finally gave him my letter of resignation. Once my income from coaching matched my income from the fire department, which, by the way, was not a lot. It was like $2,000 a month. So
jeez, okay.
I wound up
in New York City. That's not a lot. Yeah.
Right. It's not a lot. And so I wound up resigning from the fire department, and I just said, okay, it's real. If I don't get a client, I literally die. Yeah. And I put myself out there and I just did what it took. And I was making, some days I'd be making 30, 40 phone calls. I would have event after event lined up. I would go to tons and tons of meetings. I would ask people for referrals. I would tell everyone what I was doing. And Yeah, it was pretty wild for periods of time. The income fluctuation was crazy. One month was the biggest month I ever had. I made like $7,000, and then it slowly trickled down to 3 months later, I couldn't even pay my credit card bill, and my girlfriend had to pay it,
Mm.
to crying on the bathroom floor, or sitting on the toilet crying, wondering what the hell did I do to my life, and hoping maybe I could get my job back, to like, I'll figure this shit out. And
Right, right.
nobody prepares you for entrepreneurship, man.
Oh man, I'm just thinking like, oh God, I know those feelings, like it's oh, yeah, when I first started consulting, which was just kind of on a whim. This goes back 2007, I think. I'd quit my job. I was super frustrated with my old company and whatever. It was just kind of at my wit's end. I couldn't find a good place to where I could do what I really wanted to do. It's just, with messing around with technologies, design the future and all that kind of stuff. That people I was around weren't of the same mindset. They weren't moving fast enough. It was just frustrating for me. So I quit. I had no idea what I was going to do right. And you get to that point, you're like, yeah, what am I doing? I'm kind of consulting. It's sort of okay, but as the days go by, sort of this anxiety and angst builds up of like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Is this going in the right direction? Like, even if I'm starting to make the right amount of money, is this the right thing for me to do career-wise? Is it really going to last? You could have a good year, and the next year it's just completely dissolves. It's still probably the case, depending on where you're at these days. So that's interesting. Thanks for sharing, because you didn't, were your parents business people at all, or kind of that mindset? Like, what were they thinking watching you? Or were they thinking like, oh my God, our son is he's out of his mind,
Yeah, I mean, my mom, she's worked a 9 to 5 her whole life. She was a teacher, retired.
Mm.
And my dad, actually, he's worked 3 jobs his whole life. My dad's, like I said, he's a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
He has a private practice, like his own, but
Okay.
it was always a part-time thing. He never expanded it. He would do it a few nights and then on weekends.
I see.
And he worked full-time. He was a director at a hospital. He was a dean at a school,
Okay.
and then he had his private practice. And so both of my parents like were always like, get a safe job that's going to have a pension and benefits and health insurance and all that good shit.
Right.
And then, if you want to do something, do it on the side. And I would listen to a lot of these motivational videos, as I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling my mom, like, I didn't tell her I left the fire department until I left the fire department, because I knew what the conversation would be, right? It'd be like, don't leave,
Right.
just do it on the side. Because
Right.
even when I was telling her, I was like, I think I want to really grow my business, and I think I really want to make it my full-time thing. I want to be an entrepreneur. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
so can't you just do it on the side? Like, just make it for fun and like extra cash, and then you have your safe job with the benefits and blah blah blah.
Right.
And I remember having a conversation with her one day, and I said, listen, Mom, I mean no offense to you. I love you. You've worked extremely hard. You're a true inspiration. You worked full time, used to come home, cook for us, help us with homework, go to school at night, keep the house clean. Like, you were the all-star mom. I said, but you're also not a millionaire. And I'm not a millionaire either.
Right.
I said, but I want to become a millionaire.
Right.
And if I'm going to do that, I can't listen to your advice because you've never done it. And I
That's true.
appreciate that you have my back. I know as a mom, you want to see me okay and you want to see me safe, and that's why you prefer me to take the safe job.
Right.
But I want you to understand, I'm never going to be happy in the safe job, because it's not what I want for my life. I have bigger dreams and bigger aspirations, and I'm willing to put in the work to get there. I just ask that you support my decision, because I'm making it whether you like it or not.
Right.
But I would ask that you support it, because this is what my dream is and this is what I'm going for.
Whew. It's a heavy conversation, or it can be. I mean, depending on how your mom reacted, I guess. In the end, I guess she's okay with it so far.
Yeah, no, my mom's a big fan. It's been really great. I got published in like Forbes, and I was an entrepreneur in Inc.
Oh,
magazine, not Inc. Sorry, International Business Time, and all these other things. So now my mom, she's very proud. She has all of these. She'll have these little blurbs like framed in the
Right,
house.
right.
Like, she'll print out like a photo of the of the article that she took, and so he's super supportive, super proud of me. My dad is too. Everybody's really happy with the strides I made, and me too. I mean, it's been a lot of work. It's been really hard,
Right.
and I know I still have a very long way to go. I still consider myself just starting. even though my journey's in mental health has been over a decade, my journey in entrepreneurship's only coming up on like 4.5, 5 years.
Right.
So I'm still pretty new in the game, I would say, but I'm very excited to see where I end up.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I would say for only trying to, have at this for 4 and 5 years, I mean, you're doing great. So super, super successful in my eyes. And, I've seen a lot of businesses over the years, and, I've run my own for a while, maybe about, I don't know, 14 years as a consultant now. I'm trying to step a little bit more into entrepreneurship and creating more products and things for myself that are a little more, less time and, less trading time for money, that kind of thing. These days, and investing in these other kinds of activities that I'm trying to, again, jump into and figure out how to burn the bridges behind me, like you like you were saying earlier. But that's super cool. So I mean, it's just fun to know that you had that vision, that you're like, you know what, I saw what your parents' experience was, and you saw that what that offered, and you're like, you know what, I think there's something else out there that might offer me something different, something more that you're interested in. So again, it's just a great lesson for everyone who's listening out there. That's like, yeah, like, this is a different age. It's not the 20th century. We're not so locked into our careers or, our mainstream career. I think life can be a lot more fluid, And again, you can always go back and find a more, quote, more stable job, whatever that means, in a company that may or may not employ you for life, or, may or may not lay you off, or a city or whatever. Anyways, well, I think it's cool to jump into the challenge. And speaking of the challenge of just in the entrepreneurship world, a lot of the challenges out there today are in regards to technologies. So I want to ask you like a couple more tech-focused questions. And since we first got connected, this whole Chat GPT thing has kind of reared its head, or the AI's technologies have come more to the forefront. But I want to ask you in general, sort of a technology question, like when you're thinking about your business, or how to help people, maybe with techniques that are out there. How do you view the world of technology? How are you good at absorbing it and using it? And what do you think about this latest AI iteration of technology that's coming at us?
I think technology is definitely important, but I think one of the biggest things, and I'm sure this will, much like everything else, kind of die out in certain ways, is people forget that it's supposed to be an enhancer, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you were to, I don't know, let's just say if you were to implant a microchip in your brain that can give you superhuman strength, you still have to function and take care of your body, but you're enhanced by this microchip, mm-hmm. right? And so I think a lot of people right now, because it's such a big thing and it's very new, a lot of people are oversaturating the market. Like there was some wild stat of how many new books were written ever since ChatGPT came out, right? Right. And it like thousands upon thousands of books just flooded the marketplace. So what I believe is going to happen is there is going to be a lot more value in valuable people, because now you could hire anyone basically, right? Like if we're being honest, you could hire anyone to do your website's copyright, because all they're going to do most likely is go on ChatGPT, talk about what you want on your website, and then send you a website and charge you for it, right? And so now what's really going to happen is there's going to be a lot more in demand for people that are doing it in a good way, because a lot of people probably aren't taking the time to actually enhance their skills. Like good copywriters are going to probably up their prices. Right. Like no doubt about it, good copywriters are about to up their prices because of the fact that everyone's a copywriter now. Right. But nobody's as good as a good copywriter with the enhancements of these writing services. Right. So that's kind of how I see this is going to go. So right now, the saturation, everyone's like wowed by it, and then everybody's going to start realizing there's a lot of crap quality, kind of like what we saw with NFTs. Everybody was wowed by it. Everybody bought every NFT. And then what we saw is the NFTs that created communities stayed, and the other NFTs started falling by the wayside and had no value because they were just pretty, shiny things for a little bit. And then people realized it was actually just crap that was polished.
That's right. I got you. Well, that's a good perspective, and I totally agree, by the way. I think everybody gets super nervous or maybe even scared, and the fear factor out there, people like, oh, these jobs are going to be lost and all these kinds of things. And it's just like, with all the technologies I've seen over the years, and being in the engineering world, I get to see a lot more behind the scenes. And it just, when something is invented that creates an efficiency, right, or cuts out some of the manual labor that humans did, there's actually an explosion of other required jobs that come along with it,
Of course.
and that's people don't see that explosion of other required jobs. They just only see the small job sector that may go away, but they don't see well, we need social media managers now. Like they didn't understand that social media got invented, the internet got invented. Oh, we need a bunch of internet engineers. Oh my God, we didn't see that this was required. We just thought that
Right.
the mailman was going to go out of business somehow because we had email.
Yeah.
But it spawned a bunch of just gigantic industry and jobs and millionaires and taxes and all the value that it created in the process. I think that's going to be similar even with ChatGPT 4. I mean, it'll be a more interesting world perhaps that we're living in, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's a different aspect. Well, cool. Well, all right. I got one final question for you before we get out of here. Actually, two questions. Actually, I forgot to ask you about this, which I saw it on your website, and I wanted to ask you about it. And it looks like it's maybe your what do you call it? Sort of a lead gen kind of thing, where you're talking about vision boards. And it was just a funny thing that spoke to me because I have a friend, another entrepreneur friend of mine, and she's big on vision boards, and she journals a lot and creates these very elaborate vision boards and she cuts out pictures and colors things. She's like more of an artist kind of person. And I had this impression of kind of what you say on your website that, that vision boards are kind of like, oh, maybe it's a little bit of BS or whatever. And it kind of spoke to me because that's kind of how I think about them a little bit. But in getting to know you, I'm like, this is more of a level-headed guy that is probably going to bring something to the party that just is focused and works. Can you describe a little bit about this vision board idea and how you see it? Because it sounds like you have a different take.
Definitely. So my take is better. So.
Okay. And there's, whatever works for you is good, but I just want to hear a different take on it.
Of course. Here's one of the biggest things I found that, and again, this is kind of in part as to why I quit traditional therapy, is that I think there are better ways to do things and build upon what's already there, right? So that's kind of what I did with this. So I call it a mission board to not keep it in the realm of vision boards, right? Because a vision is nice, but a mission is more powerful. Mission's something you can really get behind. But a vision, I mean, shit, we have visions in our in our sleep. We call them dreams. A lot of people don't achieve dreams. We just have them, right? So the point of a mission board is to actually be a lot more intentional and dialed in than your typical vision board. Kind of like what you were saying, I got sick of vision boards. I started thinking they were bullshit. It's always some white girl with blonde hair out in Bali who barely lives a life of responsibility and is like, yeah, I'm manifesting my best life. And like, they just got all these freaking flowers and glitter and construction paper and shit on a board that means nonsense. It's just nonsense. And so I was like, well, this is really stupid. But I also know there's a lot of really good science behind certain things, and that casting vision is extremely powerful. The subconscious mind cannot achieve anything it can't see or experience first. In fact, when we look at a lot of highly successful people, high performers, even when we talk about Roger Bannister, the guy who broke the 4-minute mile, he actually had visualization techniques built into his training. That's what he attributes a lot of his success to. The ability to see him beating the 4-minute mile in his mind before he actually did it. And so I know that there's a lot of power in this because I've studied a lot on the subconscious mind. My mission board aims to really cut out a lot of the bullshit and the noise and get you intentional and clear, where you're going to take about 6 to 8 things that you really, really find value in and want to achieve in your life. And we're going to build kind of your mission around that. You're going to put an intentional I am statement. So this is part of kind of talking to the subconscious mind, right? We're not talking like, oh, this will be my body after years of hard work. It's like, no, this is my body that I work for day in and day out. Because what you're doing is you're challenging yourself to assume a new identity, which will also help you shift. So one of the biggest things that people don't understand about creating lasting and transformational change is all about identities. Everything we do comes from our identity. If you weigh 300 pounds and you want to weigh 150, first you have to believe you're the 150-pound person. You have to believe you're fit. You have to say that my identity is somebody who's fit, who's intentional, who works out, who takes care of themselves, and who will do the things that are necessary to become more of that person every single day. And then you'll start seeing what those girls might call manifesting. You'll start seeing the results manifest into your life because you've taken on the identity, and now the rest of the world is just catching up to that. And so on my mission board, we still have the photos, but it's just a few to really get you dialed in. It's that intentional identity building affirmation. And then we have probably one of the more powerful parts of the board is creating your mission, vision, and value statements, both personal and if you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur, business owner, professional. Because mission, vision, and value statements are what drive us as people. It's a core component of, again, your identity. And then lastly, I tell people put a few quotes on the board, timeless pieces of wisdom that you could always pull from in moments where you really need a perspective that will help you go through a moment that you're currently stuck in. Because those timeless pieces of wisdom that you're going to pull from these people that you admire, these quotes that you like, these will be things that you are challenging yourself to develop. You're trying to develop this perspective, and that's why you have a quote up on the board. So that's my like 10,000 foot vision of it. If people are really interested, they can check out the resource tab on my website. It is a 10-page template, and it breaks down everything about like all the stuff I just explained and more, common pitfalls, etc., that people could really look into.
I gotcha. Well, I like it, man. Less foo-foo. That's good. That speaks to me. If you're a foo-foo person, well, maybe you want to do the other one, but I like how you broke that down. And actually, the vision part really speaks to me. Like I've worked with some companies just from the consulting point of view, and I always ask them, one of the things I took away from the larger corporate world was their vision and mission statements. So when you work for a big company, they usually drill that into your head, and like day one when you start there, this is what we're doing. We are in this business, and we do it this way for these people. It's a three-part thing. And I'll ask an entrepreneur for that vision statement for their business, and a lot of them it's just like crickets.
Right.
They're like, I don't even know what you're asking me. And it's like, well, how do you make decisions going forward when you have no idea what your basis or direction or real vision is? How do you decide who to hire, what new niches to get into, all the kind of stuff if you just don't have this core idea of where you want to go? So that makes sense personally. I mean, I'm probably an example of someone I could do that for a business because I've been trained to do that. But for myself personally, I don't know if I'd taken time to do that really for myself, kind of in a less specific way. I mean, I know I want to get better at music or better at investing or better at some things, but I don't have a real concrete thing I've ever really written down for myself. So maybe I'm getting to that point finally. Finally, I'm learning.
Maybe you need a resource, Jim. I wonder where you could get it.
Well, you see, you found me out, Vin. This is why I'm doing the podcast. This is one of the reasons, for people listening out there, but also for myself to find good resources and to connect with the right kind of people. See what I'm saying? Okay. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. All right, I got one final question for you. So,
yes,
through all this, these three careers in 3 years that you've had, can you share what I call a reinvention revelation with everybody listening? Something that you've learned that you wouldn't have discovered without making these pivots, without actually changing, doing the work, taking the actions. Something that you learned about yourself or about business that can maybe help others more quickly with their journey.
As you were speaking, something was formulating, and it was, I think it was this. The biggest thing that I learned in this reinvention of the self is, I guess I always kind of knew it, but this really solidified it, is that taking action builds confidence. If you take more action than you currently are, you'll realize you're more capable than you currently are. And a lot of people don't think they're capable of doing these things. That's why they don't do them. But you actually can't develop a understanding of your capacity and capability without stress testing it. So when you do the things, they challenge you to grow, and they challenge you to become more, and they will show you that you're more capable, because the Navy SEALs have a really cool rule. And then I believe it's called the 60% rule or the 40% rule. It's one of the two. You guys could Google it.
Okay.
But essentially what they say is, the reason I use those two numbers is because what they say is, when you're tired and your body's telling you to quit and you're exhausted and you're like, I can't do this anymore, that's really your body only at 40% capacity, and you still have 60% more in the tank. And I heard that rule a long time ago, and I always clung on to that. And I pushed myself a lot in my life because of things like that. Like, I'll say, I'm feeling tired, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter right now, because it's not a real tired. It's a kind of bullshit. My body wants to quit tired, but that's not a real tired. There's times, and I think this is something that a lot of people will need to learn, is like learning your limitations. There's times where you should rest, but there are also times where you should push through and be like, I am trying to take the easy way out. I am trying to quit because it's hard, because I don't feel capable, because maybe I don't feel confident, because I don't like the results I'm getting, whatever the case. Sometimes, however, it's the opposite. Sometimes it's like, you've been pushing super hard. You actually need to rest, recharge, so that you could be a better entrepreneur and show up powerfully in your life. But you will only know that once you actually start trying things and learn more about yourself, because the journey of entrepreneurship, or the journey of life, is really just that. Continuing to discover more about who you are as a person, what makes you tick, what makes you powerful, what you hate, what you love, what inspires you, what drains you. Like, you start figuring those things out, your life really starts going in different directions. Like, I've learned that all business is the exact damn same. And some people could debate me on that, and that's fine, but I work with tons of business owners. I bought a laundromat about a year ago. I'm about to buy equity into a pizzeria. I'm about to be a three-time business owner right now.
Okay.
So, like, that's the reality of life. It's really not as crazy as people make it. It's crazy from their perspective. They don't understand it, or they got their own crap going on internally. But you could achieve anything you want. You just got to actually work for it.
Right. Well, yeah, taking action. It comes back to that, man. And I like how you stated it. Is that's what gives you confidence. That's what gives you knowledge of, can I go down this path? And I've been figuring that out about myself. Like, over COVID, I play saxophone. I've always played music in my life, but I decided to start taking lessons again after 30 years of just playing and whatever, not taking it too seriously. And when I started lessons, I took him from this super high level guy. He's in the mix. He's in New York and travels, and he's a professional. And he's so far above where I'm at, and asking me to do things. And I was, the first few months I was working with him, I was just really, one day I woke up in the mirror thinking, like, I'm not sure I can do this. I was really at my wit's end about it. I was trying, my hands hurt, my head hurt. It was just like, my body was rejecting the process kind of, because it was like you're forcing these new behaviors onto yourself. But I'm glad I powered through, because, he was not having any of it. When I would say, I'm not sure I can do this, whatever, he's just like, I don't want to hear any of that. I want to see you put in the work and get with the process. He's 100% supremely confident. He's like, if I can do this, you can do it. You just need to put the time in.
Yes.
And just think about that. Like what you said, taking action starts to give you that confidence, starts to show you actually what you're capable of. And you're capable of so much more. So thanks for sharing that, Vin. Awesome to have you on the podcast. If people are interested in checking you out more, following you, working with you, or picking your brain about something, what would you tell them to do? How should they get in touch with you?
So check me out on Instagram. It's at vin.infante. I'm very active on there. You could always shoot me a DM, take all that free content, enjoy it. You can go to my website, www.vincentinfante.life, my full name, and the free resources on there in the resources tab. And if you guys are really curious, if you are somebody who is highly motivated, action-oriented, ready to transform life or business, or both, feel free. I offer a strategy session. We could talk it out, see if it's an awesome fit to either work together, or you just get some of my time for free, and then you take whatever and you could leave and we never talk again.
Right.
Either way, these are the ways you can get in touch with me. This is what I got for you, and I look forward to seeing you guys on my social media or wherever you pop up.
I got you. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again, Vin. Thank you for listening to Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey, revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it and will help others find the same value that you found.